You know, going on a cruise ship is almost like feeling at home at the sea,
Oh,
don't you think?
sure it is. I mean, the only thing you get to pick off of a menu when you're on a cruise ship.
You get spoiled, but you do make yourself at home.
Right.
And there's a caution about that because the temptation is not only to just overpack in general,
Right.
but to bring some things that you absolutely need to leave home.
Oh,
Let's talk about that.
let's talk about it.
Well, hi, and welcome back to the channel. I am Terry with Next Wave Cruising,
I'm Rich with Next Wave Cruising.
and we're here to talk today about some things that are so tempting to bring with you in some cases. And in a few cases, I can't imagine why you'd want to bring some of these things with you. But we're going to talk about things that you absolutely need to leave home
Right.
when you're heading out on your next cruise.
Right, absolutely. And, sometimes I think, especially new cruisers, they could be surprised by some of the things that you're really not allowed to bring on there, and even with a doctor's note.
That's right. So we're going to talk about the obvious things to leave home.
Right.
Some not so obvious, and then some of the intricacies that are different among different cruise lines about the way that they interpret and make their policy
Right.
for bringing particular things with you. So we're going to cover a lot of ground, and you're going to find this really helpful, whether you're a first-time cruiser or getting back on a cruise ship again soon. So stay tuned to the end because there is important information for you all the way through. Now, if you're finding something helpful in this episode, we hope that you'll give this video a thumbs up. And giving a thumbs up is helpful because we get feedback from you that this content is helpful, and it lets us get an idea of other topics that we should be making more videos about and
Right.
bringing out to help people who love cruising.
Exactly. And after you give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. And that's not going to put you on any mailing list, but what it will do is it give you a little notification to let you know that Next Wave Cruising just put up another video to help you in your cruise planning.
That's right. So whether we're sharing our cruising adventures while we're out at sea and letting you understand what you can experience from the best destinations and the most wonderful cruise ships to helpful tips like this about things to bring and things not to bring on your cruise, you won't want to miss out on any episode. So definitely give it a thumbs up and subscribe. We truly appreciate it. And if you've subscribed already, thank you so much. We really appreciate your support to the channel, and we are committed to bringing you more exciting episodes on cruise ships across the world. Okay, well, it's time to really talk about what not to bring. Why don't we start with the obvious?
Well, yeah, there's a lot of obvious things that you're not supposed to be bringing on a cruise ship. I mean, things like firearms and knives and scissors, all these types of things, and illegal drugs. Some cruise lines now.
Gee.
And if you think that you're gonna, well, I can just put that in my sneaker and no one will know. There are cruise lines now that are starting to employ canines to sniff out those sneakers and get beyond the sneaker smell and into the illegal drugs.
So whether it's on your person or in your bag, carry-on or checked,
Right.
these things are being looked into. And whether you try to hide something and wrap it up or whatever, it's going through an x-ray machine and it will likely be found and be confiscated.
And it could be even a lot worse than that, depending upon what country you are in when you are doing that. You could be in for a lot of trouble.
That's for sure. Now, you mentioned scissors, and one thing there that I think is important to clarify is that personal grooming items, which
Right.
tend to be really small and not weaponized,
Right, yes.
are okay. So you might be bringing, a gentleman might bring a small scissors for trimming a mustache, or
Exactly.
a woman may have some things that are, for her eyebrows or something. Small items like that, personal
Right.
grooming, are usually okay, but check for the size that
Right.
is allowed on the cruise ship that you're going on.
A lot of times, like if you're doing crafts or, things like that, scrapbooking, you cannot bring those large scissors on there. Even with a rounded tip and it's just not going to be allowed on there. Now, a lot of times what they'll do when they see something like this, they'll just confiscate it and put it in a little room, and when you're done with the cruise, you can get it back. But in some cases, depending upon what the items are, they may just confiscate it and you won't see it.
That's right. So it's better to check while you're home. There's lots of information on cruise line websites, and we're going to put a link below in the description to this video that includes a number of popular cruise lines and the frequently asked questions that people have about
Right.
things they can or can't bring.
Right.
And even there, go back and check regularly because these things evolve and change. Check right before you go on your cruise because information that you read a long time ago may not be current anymore.
Absolutely, it does change, and they do have their boilerplate, exclusions like firearms and hand grenades and things like that. But they do have other things that on one cruise line may be allowed where another cruise line is not. You need to check with your specific cruise line.
That's right. And things like fireworks, like do you really need to bring your own? Because chances are, if fireworks are important and there's a holiday, you'll be seeing fireworks and light shows and laser shows and all of the entertainment you might need is going to be there for you.
Right.
Just leave the stuff at home.
Yeah,
And I don't even
yeah.
want to get into why people are bringing their handcuffs and their brass knuckles. It's just like, do not take security into your own hands either or anything else. I don't want to know.
And things like pepper spray, leave it in the car, or but on a plane you could probably put that in your check luggage, but on a cruise you can't even put it there.
That's right. So those are some obvious things. I think as people might think about it, they would agree those should be left home. But now there are so many items that are really not that obvious.
Right.
And those might be the most important ones that we can share in today's video.
Right.
So you talked about illegal drugs and substances. And okay, those might be obvious, but there are some that are kind of borderline that a lot of people would think are okay to own,
Right.
and therefore okay to bring with them on a cruise ship, but they just can't.
They can't, and that would be things like CBD oil or any kind of a CBD product. Even if you have a doctor's prescription for marijuana, it is not going to be allowed on the ship.
That's right. So that's a really big category of products that just may fly under the radar for some people, and
Right.
it's worth understanding that. Now, another thing is that with cruise ships, one of the biggest concerns in any cruise line is the risk of fire.
Right.
And so any items that might contribute to overheating and fire and open flame are in a category of items that they absolutely will confiscate and you may or may not get back.
Right.
But you can't bring, incense and candles and things that you might want to burn in your
Right.
cabin for the nice aromatherapy or whatever. Don't
Right.
bring those.
Can't do that.
But even simple things like your travel steamer. You want to look great and you want to iron and you want to steam
Sure.
and you want to maybe make your own cup of coffee with a hot plate or a coffee maker. Any of these items that plug in
Right.
and just have a risk of heat
Right.
are usually being banned.
It is, and when we first started cruising way back, you could bring a steamer on board, but no more. So a lot of times, if you're used to, I always used to bring a steamer. You can't anymore.
That's right. Now, there is a little bit of an exception to that in the sense that, again, in the grooming items area, for women in particular,
Of course.
curling irons and hair straighteners. Hey, wait a minute. These are important.
Oh,
You
I
want
guess
us to-
I can use a hair straightener too, but
Yours is not going to take too long, I hate to tell you. You could probably get by without anything that plugged in.
I
How's
can
that?
straighten my hair with a towel. There you go.
Okay, well you're covered then. You're good. But if you are, thinking about getting ready for one of those, chic nights or formal nights on your cruise, or just want to really get spiffed up after a day at the pool or something, a curling iron and a hair straightener would be okay.
Right.
And almost every cruise line, if not all of them, will provide a hair dryer
Yes.
in your stateroom. So
Exactly.
even for bulky purposes, like that's a bulky item to pack.
Right.
Just leave yours at home, use theirs, and then maybe use your curling iron or something to top things off
It
if
may
that's
not
important.
be as good as the one that you have at home, but
It'll do.
It'll do. You can get by.
It'll do. Now, there's some things around electronics that are probably, things that you've thought about over the years that would be fun to bring on a cruise ship, and you've learned they're just not welcome.
Right.
And so, can you talk a little bit
Sure.
about some of those things that just electronics that you can't bring?
Right. Well, if you're a ham radio operator and you have your license like I do, W8 RAP, you used to be able to, with the permission of the captain, to bring your ham radio on board. In fact, there was one funny story with a fellow that was in our radio club that did have that permission on a cruise line, and he was operating his ham radio with his antenna going off the balcony in his cabin, and someone reported him that he was fishing. So,
Okay. Is that how it all started?
That's probably how it all started. But unfortunately, no longer can you do that. You may be able to, depending upon the cruise line. Again, you may be able to bring one with you to be used in a foreign country. If you have a ham radio license, you understand the implications and permissions needed for that. But as far as being on the cruise ship, a lot of the cruise lines, they won't even let you bring it on board for that.
Right, and things like the emergency beacons and
Yes.
things like that, laser lights.
Right.
There are a whole category of those kinds of things that you can't bring either.
Right. Sailors would have these, well, I guess they call them e-pribs, and they put them on their life jackets, or they have them with them. And once they get wet, they would send out a satellite signal for rescuers. Well, they are not allowed to be brought on a cruise ship.
Right, and there are emergency equipment provisions made on a cruise ship, and they want you to use what's provided. And you
Exactly.
can't be bringing and activating things that, again, might cause confusion or false alarms
Absolutely.
or what have you. And so those are not good. Now, it would be fun to do some remote control sailing in the pool, but you can't bring your remote control boat either, can you?
No, unfortunately, and a lot of those rules are geared towards drones or an unmanned aircraft. And people were, abusing it, so cruise lines said no more bringing drones on board. There are cruise lines out there, I believe, offhand, Celebrity, Royal Caribbean, they do allow you to bring them. They are not to be used on board or at on any of their property, like if you go to Coco Cay, a private island or anything like that, you still cannot use
Right.
it. But you are allowed to bring it with you, and you could use them when you are visiting another country. Again, if you are familiar with drones, you should be familiar with every country has their rules, and they can be really strict. And even though some people say, oh, I brought my drone there and used it all the time, never had a problem, fine. Make sure you understand the rules of that country. And again, other cruise lines, it's not allowed to even be brought on. So check before you think you can bring it.
Right. Now, other things that when you're traveling with your family that you might not be thinking about, not so obvious, and I think kids kind of enjoy this more than most, is the footwear that has wheels on it.
Right. Yep.
Not so welcome on a cruise ship,
Absolutely.
nor are baby monitors and that kind of thing, and even perishable foods and meat products. So if you're especially, thinking about things for your family,
Right.
be really careful about what you think you might need to bring on board versus so many accommodations that can be made for you in the food and meat category by just even letting the cruise line know what your special needs are. But when it comes to some of these things like baby monitors and footwear, the rules are clear, and you need to read up on what your cruise line says you can or can't bring.
And that would really be a surprise to, a lot of people. I'm sure that they would, want to bring a baby monitor with them, or even if the kids wanted to, they have those shoes with the wheels on the bottom. Very surprising to some people when they get to the dock and they realize that those aren't allowed.
Right. Now, another place that there are some really clear rules and restrictions are around pets. And, people do feel like pets are part of the family.
Right.
But if it's not a kind of registered and correctly trained service animal,
Right.
usually a service dog, there are some really big restrictions on being able to bring your pets on board a cruise ship. And for the most part, it's for the benefit of your pet because the cruise line does not have the facilities
Right.
to really accommodate that pet being kind of taken care of well and having the spots and the places that they need to have a safe and enjoyable trip.
Oh, absolutely. And, when we're talking about a licensed service animal, that's true. You cannot bring on a support animal or anything
Just
like
your
that.
favorite pet.
And if you have any questions, and they're going to be looking for documentation, if you have any questions as to what kind of documentation you need to bring your service animal with you, then you really need to get a hold of the cruise line that you're going on.
Absolutely. And if you do have a verified service animal who is approved, you have to remember what you do have to bring is everything that that pet needs.
Right.
Their food and their medication, a life vest, their vaccination records, as you were alluding to, those are all the responsibility of the guest.
Right.
And now I'll say there's a little bit of an exception, and it's not for the average cruiser, but if you go on Cunard and you do the ocean lining crossing
Right.
from the UK to the United States, they do have ships that have an area for either cats or dogs only, and it probably is over a year in advance because the number of spots is very limited, but they do have facilities where you can bring your pet
Right.
and register them to be part of the cruise with you coming across the ocean.
That could be a lot of fun for
I can
for pet
imagine it
owners.
could. So they have areas for the pets to be run and played with. They have staff that help do that. You can't keep them with you in your cabins,
Right.
absolutely not. But they do have a special place on the ship and they can be safely transported. But that's about the only place that you're going to find pets are welcome, and even there
Right.
with rules, restrictions, and limited capacity.
Absolutely.
So that's important to keep an eye on.
You know, another thing that people may not think about, and you probably have this in your closet, a lot of countries, especially in the Caribbean, do not allow you to wear camouflage. You won't be allowed either, off the ship if you're wearing even so much as a camouflage hat. So always keep that in mind when you're packing. Don't pack it because you can't get off the ship with it.
Now, also for convenience of our viewers, we'll put a list of some of the countries we're aware of at the time of this recording that do not allow camouflage outfits or components of an outfit
Right.
to be worn while you're off the ship. And so for your reference, take a look at the description below this video. Again, check with your cruise line because these restrictions change over time and you want to make sure you are up to date. But for now, check below in the description and that'll help you out. Now, the other thing that has a lot of rules around it is alcohol. So many cruise lines offer beverage packages,
Right.
alcoholic, non-alcoholic. People want to bring soda, they want to bring cases of water, they want to bring bottles of spirits and wine. And there's a lot of rules around alcohol and non-alcoholic beverages that you may want to try to bring with you on a cruise line.
Usually the big rule is no.
Well, or limits, big limits.
With big limits. Usually spirits,
Don't do it.
don't do it. On an ocean cruise liner, you cannot bring spirits on. Now, some river cruises do allow that, but on ocean cruises, absolutely not. If you are at a port and you found something on port that you wanted to bring on, they will take it, put it in a locker. When you get off the ship, they'll give it back to you. So, but there is no spirits that are allowed to be brought on and consumed, whether it's in your cabin or anywhere else. And trying to sneak it through usually does not work.
And I think the cruise lines have gotten way more sophisticated in figuring out what alternate bottles
Right.
people are putting things in.
Right.
And they will
That's
figure a lot more of it out than they used to.
Right.
But to their credit, many of them, but not all, allow you to bring maybe 1 or 2 bottles of wine per
Right.
person or per stateroom that you can bring on at the original port of embarkation when you first get on the ship
Right.
for you to enjoy in your room. If you bring it to the dining room, there's a corkage fee.
Right.
Sometime that's waived if you have a beverage package, sometime it's not. But if you consume that 1 or 2 bottles of wine, you can't stop at the next port and replenish. It's
No.
it's just what you bring on at the beginning is a single allocation. And keep checking because the cruise lines change these rules from time to time. If you ever see the Facebook posts that are out there with the confusion and the debates about what wine people can or can't bring with them on board,
Right.
you know that this is an ever-evolving topic.
I can
Just
bring
check
this.
with
No,
the
you
cruise
can't.
line.
Well, they changed it. Well, they changed it back. And
Go
it's
to the
this.
source for your information. I would not rely on casual conversations online and
Right.
social media.
Yep.
Check with your cruise line. Ask if you have a question. And that can even apply if you want to bring big cases of water, if you want to bring cases of soda.
Right.
Some of them will allow you a certain amount that you might be able to bring of something like that, and
Right.
some of them will not. But you need to understand what the
It's all
restrictions
different.
are so
And
you
that
don't feel
really-
disappointed.
That's kind of like a bug with me a little bit because like with a bottle of wine, we always get the drink package. So it's not like I'm trying to get around the drink package or paying for the drinks. I've already paid for the drinks. But if you're going on a 3-day cruise or a 30-day cruise, the amount of bottles that you can bring on board to enjoy a glass in your on your veranda in your cabin, it's all the same. And there is, I think, one line out there that does allow you to have more depending upon the length of the cruise. There is one that allows you to bring up to 60 bottles of wine, but you better be going on
Yikes.
one of those round the world cruises for that one. So
That is amazing. I haven't bumped into that opportunity
I
yet.
can't imagine. Here's my luggage, and then here's my hand cart with all the 60 bottles of wine. But again, you're going to be on there for an around the world cruise, so I guess so.
Maybe.
Yep.
Now, there are some things that individual cruise lines might allow. And so when we talk about these big categories of excluded items, you do want to check with your cruise line, because if they allow your fishing rod, or if they allow kites, or if they allow golf clubs, those might be things that are going to add to the enjoyment of your destination and your
Absolutely.
vacation. So check those out. There's such a long list of those. They're not identical from cruise line to cruise line.
Right.
So even if you're used to going on one cruise line and now you're going on another, don't make the assumption
That you can just do it.
know what
Right.
the rules are, because that's really the protocol defined by the cruise line itself.
Absolutely.
And it's the responsibility of the guest.
Yes, sometimes they allow you to, I don't know of any cruise line that does not allow golf clubs, but sometimes they're going to, allow you to keep them in your cabin. Other times they're going to have to hold on to them in their security, and you get it when you get off the ship to go for your golf outing. But it is different, so you really have to check and make sure. But most likely, if you're bringing golf clubs, you can do that.
Right. Now, one of the things we promised that we would tell people is, as things are changing, there are new items that could be restricted that used to be okay.
Used to be fine. Everybody had them.
And
right.
one of those is perhaps, again, surprising for families. And there's at least one major family-oriented cruise line that has just very recently brought up that no walkie-talkies are allowed.
Right.
And so we do see that on NCL.
Right.
And it may be that is also the case on some other cruise lines. So
If
check.
it isn't now, it probably will be in the future. So always check. I'm sure that there's a lot of people out there that are very happy that walkie-talkies are no longer allowed. So instead of the kid yelling into the walkie-talkie, he's yelling into a cell phone. So
Perhaps. And I think that's really the whole impetus behind it, is there's less of a need for walkie-talkies
Right.
as a separate device. So many cruise lines have an app of their own, and even if you don't purchase their Wi-Fi package, you have access to their app, and then sometimes you have access to a texting feature
Right.
for a small fee or complimentary.
Right.
And families can keep in touch in so many ways without bringing walkie-talkies that can be intrusive at the pool, at entertainment venues, etc.
Right.
And so it's just another way to sort of simplify and hopefully improve the cruise experience for everyone.
everybody.
And
Yes.
so leave those walkie-talkies at home on NCL, or check with your cruise line if you're going with somebody else. Now, there's one last thing that some cruise lines ask you to leave at home. And it's a surprising one to some people, and that's your children.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, they're good news.
Who
Your
would
kids
ever
aren't
think-
allowed.
Oh
right?
no, bad news. Your children are not allowed. Well, that's really going to vary. There are a few cruise lines, though, that are really targeting their experience to either older children or to adults only.
Right.
And it's important to know which ones those are if you're thinking of taking an ocean cruise with them,
Right.
or sometime river cruises. And river cruises in particular have some age restrictions for sure. But you may see either Viking and Virgin on
Right.
the oceans that just don't allow anyone unless they're 18 and older.
That's right. You probably know that if you've booked a cruise with them. But if you're thinking about, I wonder which cruise line I should go on, you should be aware that at least those two lines currently, you have to be 18 or older to cruise.
Right. And it's not unusual for me to get a request as a travel advisor to say, we have a family that wants to travel. We have a small baby who's 4 or 5 months old. And that's something else that you need to be aware of as a family who's starting to plan your next set of travels. If you've recently brought a baby into the family, whether that's multi-generational travel or the parents with a child, You need your child to be 6 months old in order to get on the cruise line
At
at the
all.
time of sailing.
Right.
Not during the sailing, not right after, but at the time they're getting on board, at least 6 months old
Right.
to get on a cruise ship. And even there is a caveat and an exception when the child would have to be a little bit older.
That's right. If you are going to be at sea for 3 days or more
In a
without a
row.
port, in a
Yeah.
row, without a port, then the child has to be a year old.
That's right. And again, this is all going back to the safety and the health opportunity for everyone on the cruise
Right.
ship. The medical facilities are very well supportive of cuts and scrapes and things that might happen to
Right.
adults. But there are children who perhaps haven't finished their vaccinations that are susceptible to different kinds of issues and
Right.
problems. And for babies, cruise ships just don't really have the equipment, the
Right.
facilities
The
to take
pediatric facilities
to
that they would
take
need.
care of what they would want to take care of for someone who is under 6 months, or if they're not readily available to get onto land,
Right.
as you said, 3 days or more in a row at sea, even someone between 6 and 12 months. And so those guidelines are very important. They're pretty standard across all cruise lines. And these are things that you can find and you must find directly on the cruise line website. And if you have a question, then as you're talking to us about booking your cruise, ask your questions. We can help point you to the information that is current and up to date. And it will be the information from the cruise line, not hearsay, but let you really check, go to the source and get all this information. There are just these things you need to leave at home.
Right. And one thing that comes to mind when you are bringing your children on board, especially your 8 month old children, everybody always wonders, even for adults, do I need to get a passport? And for some closed loop cruises, a passport isn't required, but a passport is required for any air travel. So if you're bringing, if you have an 8 month old, and for whatever reason you need to fly home, every member of your family needs to have a passport to do it. I mean, you're going to run into a lot of red tape if you don't. So I know firsthand that you can get a passport for very young infants. So, it's probably a good idea to consider getting that passport for the baby as well.
That's right. And it takes a while right now to get passports, so plan ahead, make those applications, and make sure your own passport has enough time left on it beyond the date of your cruise,
Right.
so that it will be acceptable, so that between this packing set of tips and your documents, you're going to have exactly what you need to enjoy your cruise, and you've left at home all those things that would cause concern and stress, and you're going to be ready for a great cruising vacation.
Right, because once you get on board, it's just so much fun.
That's right. And talking about so much fun on a cruise ship, there's so much more to share with you. Take a look at the video in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. We will share more of our cruising adventures with you there, and we'll see you in the next video.
Bye now.